Hello folks, it's me, DeMontropolis, and I return to the Super Mario series with Super Mario Bros. 2, released in 1988 for the NES. Developed once again by Nintendo R&D 4, Mario 2 has probably one of the most interesting development histories out of any Mario game, as far as I know. I won't go into too much detail, but I'll touch on it a little bit. If y'all remember Super Mario Bros. The Lost Level, a game which I reviewed last year, that game's original Famicom release never made it overseas, as Nintendo of America deemed it too difficult for Western audiences. Thus, another sequel had to be made in place. So Nintendo based it on a game they had made in Japan, advertising the Yumikojo 87 Festival, broadcasted by Fuji Television. The festival's mascots and theming were adapted to the Super Mario brand for Westerners, and Mario 2 became so popular that it was even brought back to Japan 4 years later under the title Super Mario USA. If you want to learn more about the two games' regional differences, I've linked a video in the description, made 3 years ago by She Says. Very insightful content. That's a general synopsis out of the way. So now let's get into the review and see why this game is so popular despite its departures. Super Mario Bros. 2. The most unique distinction Mario 2 has is that with each level, you can choose between 4 different characters, each being well balanced and distinct from each other. There are 3 stats taken into account. Jump height is self-explanatory, strength is how quick you are to pick up heavy objects, and speed determines how fast you can move while holding those heavy objects. Generally speaking, the stronger and faster characters have weaker platforming stability, and vice versa. Mario's mostly balanced stats are established here, and he's my favorite character for being the most consistent to use. He's the second best in every category, having good strength and speed, but his jump especially is strong enough to clear 4 tiles of height consistently, which cannot be cleared by Toad or Peach without them having to crouch jump. This gives Mario the most natural flow across levels compared to everyone else, even Luigi. So if I ever need someone who can perform well in any situation, Mario is the way to go. Luigi retains his high jumps from the lost levels, but he also uses a flutter kick when airborne, keeping him in the air longer than anyone else. Although he can jump 4 tiles just like Mario, he has the highest crouch jump. Whereas everyone can reach 5 tiles once their crouch has been held long enough, Luigi can reach 6 tiles of height. It may not sound like much of a difference, but all these factors give Luigi many opportunities to carve shortcuts exclusive to him. As such, he's a menace for speedrunning. Toad over here is the strongest in picking up heavy items, which can save time and allow Toad to be quick on the draw in combat. Even comparing Toad's strength to Mario's, the difference is very noticeable. Toad is also the only character who actually runs faster when holding heavy items, and there are some situations where Toad can actually benefit from this to reach somewhere much more quickly. To balance this, he sucks at platforming. With a mere 3-tile jump being all he has to rely heavily on crouch jumping in order to get around. Peach may seem like the worst character at first, as she has the lowest strength, speed, and jump height all rolled in one. However, Peach has a unique float that lets her hover for a few seconds in the air, which makes traversal snappy and breezy, but also allows her to correct an otherwise fatal fall. Just like Luigi, Peach has access to many shortcuts thanks to being able to stay in the air for so long. It's arguably one of the most iconic abilities in the game, and it goes to show how fun Peach can be, despite all of her stats trying to say otherwise. Although each character has weaknesses, I like how you can overcome them with enough skill. Mario may have no outstanding abilities, but he doesn't need to if you play into his many strengths. Toad's weakness at platforming can also be overcome once you fully understand the game's momentum physics. My favorite example is World 2-3. There's a higher up door that normally Luigi can reach with a 6-tile jump, but the other characters can get up there too, using the Bezos as stepping stones. Even Toad can reach it with enough skill. Although Mario 2 is ultimately a reskin of Yumikojo Doki Doki Panic, it actually improves on many things from the original Famicom game. The characters in Doki Doki Panic couldn't run as expected from a Mario title, which thankfully was restored. I'll go into more improvements later down the road, But the most important change was how you actually beat the game. In Mario 2, you can simply go through the game once with any combination of characters in order to see the ending. But in Doki Doki Panic, you had to beat every level with every character. It did try to make up for that with a save feature, but still, you had to beat every level 4 times, for a total of 80 levels in order to see the ending. That's at least 5 to 6 hours, a tedious requirement that I'm glad was removed. Both games have a health meter of 2 hit points. After 2 hits, you die. A new thing in Mario 2 is that when down to your last hit point, your character shrinks to a smaller size, just like in Mario 1. I know it's meant to be a cute reference, but getting smaller doesn't actually decrease your hitbox, and that can be a problem when every other Mario game accustoms you to believing otherwise. In Mario 2's case, it stays the same as if your size never changed, so that means no running under small gaps, and you still have to duck when an enemy or projectile flies right over you. When you play the game, you'll notice these clumps of grass everywhere, so much so that you'll rarely come across screens that don't have grass. These encourage the mechanic of plucking grass from the ground to reveal items that were hiding in the soil, such as these baby stems or the larger vegetables. These serve as ammunition to throw at enemies, as unlike most Mario games, they cannot be defeated by jumping on top of them to stomp. Rather, you can stand on most enemies and actually pick them up yourselves. Just like with vegetables, you can throw enemies at each other, and an exclusive perk Mario 2 has over Doki Doki Panic is that you can build up combos with one thrown enemy. Enemies that collided with each other carry the momentum, and you can wipe a whole row of enemies this way. Better yet, running towards your thrown item after a hit an enemy will let you pick it up again to continue your combo. The game takes place in the dream world of Subcon, where Mario and Co. have to liberate the Subcon citizens from a villainous gang called the 8-Bits. While most enemies are primarily known for their appearance in this game, many recurring faces were introduced here. Shy Guys and their brethren were designed with the mask motif from Doki Doki Panic in mind, which would encompass their personalities going forward. Pokies and Bob-ombs also appeared here, but with different designs than usual. Since Pokies are segmented, you can knock down the whole tower with a well-timed attack, and it's always fun to do so. Bob-ombs especially are aggressive, and given they had arms in this game, I always thought they were on steroids with how fast and muscular they were. I do take issue with some of the sniffets in this game. The pink ones are fine, as they shudder to telegraph their attack. The stationary ones, though, are easily the most unfair enemy in the game, as they do not shudder at all and have random shoot timings. Many sections in the game also force you to jump or climb past these guys in their crosshairs, with there being no strategy other than just praying you don't get shot. There's even the oddity of there being only one red sniffet in the entire game, found in World 3-3 in a pathway that ultimately leads to a dead end. As such, there's really no reason to give him your attention. While the controls are mostly good, there's many parts about them that have always bothered me. When it comes to climbing, you cannot let go of climbable objects by jumping off. You have to move off the left or right sides. Outside of sections where vines or chains were deliberately placed next to each other, it never feels intuitive to me, as you could sometimes slip off trying to grab them, which resulted in you falling down and having to climb back up again. Your stability isn't guaranteed with these, and that's probably why they always felt so odd to me. Although accelerating to your top speed is quick, even allowing you to accelerate mid-air, trying to slow down is a bit awkward, when comparing your ground friction to air friction, that is. On the ground, you have almost perfect traction and can stop on a dime. In the air though, your momentum does not slow down at all, even if you let go of a direction. It's mostly from these two types of frictions being so extreme and different from each other that it can feel unwieldy. But one of the most notable cases regarding this is with Luigi trying to stand on these hoopsters. When these enemies detect you above or below, they crawl faster. Every character can stand on them no matter how fast they move, except Luigi. Because he is much floatier, his falling speed does not keep up with the hoopsters, and he switches to air-based controls when they move down. It's most noticeable in World 5-2, where you have to platform on top of these hoopsters, and if you're carrying a potion across, necessary for one of the mushrooms, Luigi can very easily eat a jump input on accident and fall to his death from the sudden air momentum. Another issue involves crouch jumping with an item in your hand. If you fully do a crouch jump and you're still holding on the run button while you do so, you'll immediately discard your item unintentionally when you jump. There's this one mushroom in World 1-3 where you need to reach an upper area with your potion in hand, and if you want to reach that log, you have to let go of that run button, or else you'll accidentally waste the potion. Mario 2 has a few goodies that spawn at the bottom of the screen as a reward. If you kill 8 enemies, a health heart will appear. If you collect 5 cherries, a star will appear. It's fun to collect these items, but they do have an issue if they spawn inside a large wall, which can render them inaccessible. It's less likely to happen with the stars, as they sway left and right more noticeably, but the hearts do not, and they may even appear inside these walls, despite the last enemy not even falling close to it. Despite that potential inconvenience, the star is obviously very useful for letting you rip through enemies without retaliation, and there are many other power-ups just like it that can assist you. The POW blocks previously seen in the arcade game Mario Bros. Make an appearance here, and are very useful for knocking away all grounded enemies. Although there are no Koopas, you can pick up their shells and throw them for the same effect, though it is a bit strange that they don't bounce off walls. Stopwatches can freeze everything around you for several seconds, but they only appear for every 5th large vegetable that you pull up. A few areas are actually designed around this gimmick, such as in World 3-1, where there's a pink panzer who blocks you from exiting an area only until you pull the 5 conveniently placed vegetables inside. I mentioned potions before, but they are very important. Throwing one on the ground generates a door to subspace, an alternate world that rewards coins for every grass you pull, and mushrooms that increase your total HP, usually up to a total of 4 HP per level. Coins are unique in that they are actually used for the bonus chance slots at the end of each level to get extra lives. And you also can't cheese the game by farming coins forever, as you only get 2 subspace visits to get coins before they become regular vegetables. Subspace also allows warp zones to be pulled off by entering very specific jars, specifically ones that you cannot enter normally and deliberately look out of place. To make sure enemies don't spawn on top of you after you leave subspace, the game gives you 2 tiles on each side where enemies cannot spawn. This safe zone is too small though, because enemies are quick enough to still immediately attack you. Flurries are the biggest factor of this problem, as they start out moving very quickly and will instantly catch you by surprise. If you're playing as Toad and Mario, it's a bit annoying to pick up coins as fast as you can, because the game likes to eat your pull inputs after every 2 coins you pull. But the biggest problem I have with subspace though, is having to hunt for mushrooms. If they aren't right next to where the potion spot is, trying to hunt them on your own is near impossible. Because the screen does not scroll in subspace, you can only check one screen at a time, and no clues are given if you fail to find a mushroom. Also, keep in mind that potions can only be used once unless you are able to reset the room with a door that you can enter. So unless you intend on playing these levels enough times to check every single screen, most mushrooms will remain an elusive mystery. I do like bonus chance, but for a very specific reason. While it may seem random, you can actually time the slots with good enough precision, and this is best done with the cherries. Unlike every other image, where you need to get all 3 of that same image for a 1-up, cherries are considered lucky, and if you get even 1 cherry on the left, you'll earn at least 1 extra life. Lining up cherries from left to right will yield even more, up to 5 1-ups for 3 cherries. And since you can time this, you can score a lot of 1-ups and possibly rack up over 200 1-ups, to the point where the game starts counting your 1-ups in hexadecimal. I myself am able to hit the max amount consistently, that being 254 1-ups, or P4, and it has become my favorite way to collect 1-ups. Much better than relying on the mere 5 1-up mushrooms found across the game. In addition to the enemies I mentioned before, Mario 2 has a memorable variety of enemies that each manage to stand out from each other. Ostros and Autobombs are both controlled by Shy Guys and make for hectic encounters, especially when paired with other enemies. Pidgeots and Albatrosses are both birds who offer extra ways to interact with platforms on top of attacking from above. Cobrats and Panzers are more aggressive and can give you trouble if you try to act funny around them. Speaking of funny, you have the flurries chasing after you, frantically slipping on the ice while they do so. Arguably the most iconic enemy is Phanto, a standout threat who hunts you down every time you steal his key. No key is left unsupervised, and no breach is left unchecked with these menacing masks in charge. As long as you hold the key, they will come alive and relentlessly pursue you from awkward angles and at bizarre speeds, enough to give a child nightmares. They cannot be killed permanently. You either have to outrun them or outsmart them by dropping the keys so they leave you alone for the time being. Birdo over here is a nice recurring mid-boss who is spiced up every now and then. Pink ones are basically the tutorial boss, as they only spit eggs which you can pick up, and at a low frequency too. Red ones are the most common, shooting a mix of eggs and occasionally fireballs, but mostly eggs. Green ones are by proxy the most difficult ones, as they only spit fireballs and must be beaten by other sources like mushroom blocks. Both the red and green Birdos also attack at a faster rate too, so despite the simple pattern, they can definitely be tricky, but they can also be killed just as quickly. And fun fact, because of her description in the instruction manual, Birdo can be considered one of gaming's first transgender characters. While Luigi and Peach generally struggle against tough enemies like Birdo due to their weaker strength, they have access to a technique that I like to call pickup buffering that makes it easier to defeat Birdo. Although they take a while to pull up mushroom blocks, the pull animation actually makes them invincible for its full duration. So if a Birdo attack is flying at you, picking up the mushroom block will ignore damage completely. For the record, I found this out by complete accident, but it gives Luigi and Peach an edge around their weakness. You just need good enough timing to pull it off. In terms of level design, I found it to be clever throughout. Each level has you doing new things to progress through it, such as how you navigate one area to the next. Like, with every Pidgeot in the game, you use their magic carpets in a different way each time. The last pink Birdo that you see may seem out of place, but unlike most other Birdos, she's not holding an item in her stomach. In order to progress, you actually have to stand on her egg to cross a large lake, which is creative. Every level also contains a mask gate that you have to enter in order to beat a level or enter the boss room, which has the side effect of desensitizing the player into thinking they are all harmless. Perfect opportunity to pull a prank on the last level, which has the final mask gate come alive for a surprise attack in a truly terrifying 180. Most levels also contain shortcuts that skip right to the end. World 1-1 has the most recognizable shortcut with jumping past the waterfall, and once you manage to bomb that wall, you can enter the boss room from the right side. World 3-1 and 4-3 have shortcuts that normally Luigi and Peach can exploit, but with the former, Mario and Toad can reach it too, by placing blocks on the smaller clouds and jumping from there. Lastly, World 6-3 has a shortcut that can skip the entire level, and all you have to do is let the quicksand carry you underneath this giant wall. There is an issue with how long levels are on average. It's inconsistent, and on a first playthrough, it's impossible to tell how long a level's going to be. You have levels like World 4-1 and 6-2, which have one main section and one section only, but then you have these larger mazes like World 3-3 that seem enormous and never-ending. That level has so many doorways leading to dead ends, depending on which area you enter, and if you ignore the key to check out the door that you can already enter, you'll only be confusing yourself even more. The game does have appealing gimmicks throughout, so most levels are kept fresh with what obstacles and platforms they offer. Many of the waterfalls have these falling logs that you can jump across, an archetype that would become pretty common in future platformers, such as Mega Man 7, funnily enough. Deserts have quicksand, and snow areas have slippery ice, with both areas playing into these mechanics. World 4-2 has one of the most memorable set pieces, with an entire sea of whales. They can help you out, as their blowhole's water spray can be stood on, but the pressure can also hurt you if you walk into the sides. And World 7-2 has conveyor belts throughout the entire castle, making traversal around enemies more tricky and challenging. If there's one gimmick I really don't like, it's the soft sand found in nearly every desert level. You have to dig through these thick layers of soft sand in order to dive deeper, while Shy Guys follow you through the holes you carve. Pulling through these layers of soft sand is tedious and dull, no matter the strength of your character, as there really isn't much to it besides avoiding and outsmarting the Shy Guys. The levels that have several screens worth of soft sand to dig through are easily the most boring parts of the game. There are two types of quicksand, slow and fast. The fast variation can usually be avoided, but man, it is painful to jump out of. Because it sinks you in so fast, you're forced to mash that jump button, and that makes it tough to actually get out of that quicksand, especially if you're playing as Toad. Poor guy has no hops. I talked about jars briefly, but they are basically Mario 2's stand-in for pipes. Outside of the warp zone jars, almost every single one can be entered, but most of them have these useless rooms that can discourage exploration. While only a few jars carry something valuable, like a potion or even a 1-up, the rest pack these items that just aren't worth the effort. Why would I dodge this green Sniffet's random firing just for a Koopa shell that has no use in a desert level? The OST for this game is pretty small, but pleasant nonetheless. The main ground theme that plays for every level is thankfully very lively. The two boss themes keep this steady, intimidating beat. And a cool thing about Mario 2 specifically is that the ground theme and the character select got unique extensions to make them longer and more deviant from the central pitch. I also like how songs from the first game got remixed here, even though Mario 1's ground theme is so humorously out of place for the dark dimension that is subspace. When it comes to graphics, it's simplistic, but each world has some nice variety that makes it easy to remember them. World 3 is distinguished from World 1's grassy hills thanks to its massive waterfall and a cave system. World 5 is mostly nighttime, but whereas every other world has a castle taking up the bulk of their last level, World 5 actually sees you scaling the inside of a giant wooden tree, then flying right past the many trees at the top, when just a few minutes ago you were walking next to them at ground level. World 7, the last world, takes place high in the sky, a location you'd typically associate as the penultimate setting before the lava world. Most levels are very enjoyable to go through, but out of all the levels in the game, there are two that carry the most irritating challenges. World 5-2 has this obnoxious spike drop, triggered by pulling a POW block underneath so you can fall. Unless you're playing as Luigi, who's privileged with a slower falling speed, you have to maneuver around large quantities of spikes with little room to properly maneuver them on a blind reaction. The worst part about it is that the bottom actually has many pits you can fall into if you move the wrong way. An unnecessary frustration if you ask me, and it's lame that there are no enemies to use the POW block's earthquake on either. World 6-1 has this jar maze, where the only way to progress is by looking through a total of 21 jars in order to find the key. This kind of design is always time consuming on a first playthrough, because there's no easy way out. If you don't know the exact jar that holds the key, you just have to keep weeding through jars, making sure not to re-enter previous ones until you see that Phanto. And some of these jars even have surprise Cobrats hiding under the mushroom blocks to assault you for fun. I think my favorite part of this game would actually be the main boss fights. A few of them get reused, but there's a lot of variety on display. The snide Mauser is frantically throwing bombs, and amidst the confusion, you have to grab the fresh ones and time your throw so they blow up in his face. Claw Grip is similar in that he throws rocks, but these have more erratic arcs and bounces, plus a pit you have to worry about. But you do get the chance to actually combo him if you throw one rock at another to slow them down. And fun fact, Claw Grip is a unique boss to Mario 2, as he was added to replace a third albino Mauser who had spikes underneath his platform. Triclide and Fry Guy are both bosses who require setting up walls with mushroom blocks in order to make their fights easier, and oftentimes you have to do it while they are still attacking. Triclide packs huge firepower covering a set area, and it's very difficult to react to and avoid, so blocking his offense with the big wall will render you safe. With Fry Guy, who's ironically the boss of the ice world, you want to build this wall while he's flying around and spitting fire everywhere, because when he's defeated, he splits into 4 small Fry Guys that can overwhelm you like a pack of zombies. Putting up that wall beforehand will give you a vantage point above their shorter jumps, and you can even herd them together so you can extinguish more than one in a single attack. As for Wart, the leader of the 8-bits and the game's final boss, he is not much more complex, but still manages to bring good closure to the game. Wart spits out these acidic bubbles in various arcs, often spread out in ways that may force you to run through them in a tight manner. The interesting bit is how you actually hurt him. The dream machine in the background, which got hijacked by Wart to produce monsters, has now been set to produce nightmares. Turning against Wart when your presence is nearby, the nightmares in question manifest as vegetables for you to catch. Although vegetables are Wart's only weakness, you have to time your throws so the vegetables actually enter Wart's mouth when he attacks. Otherwise it won't hurt him at all, and even doing that is made tricky, with his bubbles disintegrating your vegetables. With good timing though, you can actually interrupt most of Wart's attacks and get a good streak going, and I like how Mario 2 buffed up his durability. In Doki Doki Panic, he was defeated in a mere 4 hits, which was bumped up to 6, and I think that's a perfect number for the final boss to have. When you manage to beat Wart, you free all the subcons locked away and celebrate via the ending. The ending puts the main 4 on a pedestal and shows each of their contributions throughout your playthrough. Basically how many times you played as this character or that character. It's always fun observing your statistics this way and seeing which character you happen to play more or less as. And when all is said and done, a charming plot twist reveals that the entire adventure was all a dream Mario had during his sleep. Must have been a really good dream for him, provided you didn't get any game overs or die. But real talk, the cutscene is animated very well for an NES game. Normally I would say it's mesmerizing to stare at just for the detail alone, but watching someone sleep for that long could be interpreted as creepy, and I'm above that. In the end, I have 25 pros and 15 cons. All in all, Super Mario Bros. 2 is a very enjoyable game, proving that even with departing so much from the predecessor, you can still make a high quality game. The only reason why I don't think too highly of this game is that most of the cons come from my frustrations with the game when I was younger, traits that have always peeved me about the game's design since. Thus, I ended up not liking this game for a long time until I picked it up recently to give it another chance. Even with its odd origin as an Arabian storybook adventure, the game has done so much for the Mario franchise as a whole, and we would be in a very different place if this game never got converted for the West. So with that, I'm going to give Super Mario Bros. 2 a rating of 8 out of 10. Great! And that's the end of this review. If you like what you saw, consider giving a like and subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment if you have something to say. And as per usual, my Discord server DeMontropolis is in the description, so consider joining if you like my content. And what do you know, I was able to get this review done before the 2nd anniversary's deadline. But now that that's coming up in just a couple of days, I'm very excited to go over the progress I made in 2024. And with that said, I'll be signing off. Take care, folks.